What if the tiredness you feel every single afternoon isn't stress, isn't age, and isn't your imagination, but something living inside you? Stay with me for the next few minutes, because what you're about to hear might explain years of symptoms doctors couldn't connect. Before we go any further, do me a quick favor. Tap that like button right now, not later, right now, because it tells YouTube this video matters and helps someone else find it today. And if you've never subscribed to this channel before, this is the video to start with. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and let's get into something your body may already be trying to tell you. Here's a strange truth about the human body. It rarely screams, it whispers, and most of us are too busy, too distracted, or too used to feeling off to notice the whisper until it becomes something louder. Intestinal parasites are one of those whispers. Millions of people around the world carry them without ever knowing it, not because they're rare, not because modern hygiene has erased them, but because the symptoms they cause look almost exactly like 100 other ordinary problems. Bloating after dinner, a little more tired than usual, skin that breaks out for no clear reason, trouble sleeping through the night. On their own, none of these seem alarming. Together, over months, they start to form a pattern most people never step back far enough to see. Let's talk about what's actually happening. Worms and parasites enter the body in simple, everyday ways. Undercooked meat, unwashed vegetables, contaminated water, even the kind that looks perfectly clean. A surface touched by unwashed hands, then touched by yours. Soil that carries microscopic eggs from animals or other people. None of this requires living somewhere exotic or eating something obviously risky. It can happen at a backyard barbecue, a salad bar, or a public restroom. Once inside the body, these organisms don't announce themselves. They settle into the intestines and quietly start feeding on the food you eat, and sometimes on nutrients your body desperately needs. Over time, that quiet theft adds up. It shows up as fatigue that sleep doesn't fix. It shows up as cravings, especially for sugar, because certain parasites thrive on it. It shows up as a stomach that never quite feels settled. And here's the part that surprises most people. You don't need to have traveled overseas. You don't need to have eaten anything unusual. You could get this from your own kitchen, your own garden, or even your own pet. So how do you know if this is really happening inside you, or if it's just an ordinary case of a slow week? There are signals worth paying attention to. Persistent bloating, especially after meals that never used to bother you. Stomach pain that comes and goes without any obvious trigger. Diarrhea or constipation that shows up in cycles, almost like clockwork instead of once and gone. Unexplained weight loss, even when your appetite hasn't changed. Itching around the anus, especially at night, which is one of the more specific signs linked to certain types of worms. Grinding your teeth while asleep, which sounds unrelated but has been observed in many documented cases. And a tiredness that feels different from normal exhaustion, heavier, duller, the kind that a good night's sleep doesn't touch. No single symptom proves anything on its own. That's exactly why this condition slips past so many people for so long. Your bloating might be blamed on stress. Your fatigue might be blamed on your job. Your skin might be blamed on a new soap. Each piece gets explained away individually, and the full picture never gets assembled. This is the trap. The body sends the same handful of signals for a dozen different problems. A parasite doesn't come with a warning label. It just quietly reshapes how you feel day after day, until not feeling like yourself becomes your new normal. Let's slow down for a second, because understanding why this happens matters more than just knowing the symptoms. Your gut is not just where digestion happens. It's one of the busiest, most sensitive systems in your entire body. It houses trillions of bacteria that help break down food, produce certain vitamins, and even communicate with your brain through what scientists now call the gut-brain connection. When something foreign moves into that environment, something that isn't supposed to be there, it disrupts the balance of everything around it. Parasites compete for nutrients. They can damage the lining of the intestines. Some release toxins as a byproduct of their own survival. Your immune system responds to all of this, and that immune response itself can cause inflammation, fatigue, and even changes in mood. So what feels like just a stomach issue can quietly ripple outward into how you sleep, how you concentrate, and how much energy you have to get through your day. And because it happens slowly, you adapt. You start eating smaller portions because big meals feel heavier than they used to. You plan your day around your energy dips instead of asking why they're there. You stop mentioning the bloating to your doctor because it doesn't feel serious enough to bring up. That quiet adjustment is exactly how years can pass without anyone connecting the dots. There's another layer to this that rarely gets talked about, and it has to do with your immune system's own memory. When a parasite settles in and stays for a while, your body doesn't just react once and move on. It stays on alert. Low-grade, background alert, the kind that doesn't feel like sickness but slowly drains your reserves. Some researchers believe this constant, quiet immune activation is part of why people with long-standing intestinal parasites often describe feeling like they're running at 80%, even on their best days, not sick enough to stay in bed. just never quite at full strength either. Children are especially vulnerable to this pattern, though adults are far from immune. In parts of the world where parasitic infections are common, doctors have long observed that children carrying intestinal worms often show slower growth, lower concentration in school, and more frequent stomach complaints than their peers. The parasites themselves rarely cause dramatic, obvious illness. Instead, they cause a slow leak, a background drag on health that becomes the new normal simply because no one ever compares it to what full health would actually feel like. Now here's where it gets interesting, because long before modern lab testing existed, cultures around the world had already noticed this pattern, that something small and hidden could be draining a person's energy from the inside, and many of them turned to nature for an answer. One of the most fascinating examples comes from traditional medicine systems in South Asia, where healers used specific plants for centuries to support the gut and help the body naturally clear unwanted organisms. These weren't random remedies. They were passed down, refined, and documented across generations of trained practitioners who observed what worked and what didn't, long before anyone had a microscope to explain why. One plant in particular keeps showing up in these old medical texts. A small, dark-berried, climbing vine that grows wild in forested hill regions of India, Nepal, and Sri Lanka. For over 2,000 years, it was used specifically for issues involving the digestive tract, described in ancient language as something that helps the body deal with what doesn't belong inside it. That description, written so long ago, sounds almost eerily modern when you think about what we now understand about parasites. What's remarkable is that this wasn't folk superstition passed around casually. It was part of a structured medical system, with its own texts, its own trained physicians, and its own careful methods for how and when a remedy should be used. Dosage mattered. Timing mattered. It was often combined with dietary changes and followed up with observation, the same way a modern treatment plan would be monitored today, when something survives inside a serious medical tradition for 2,000 years, being used again and again for the same category. The problem? That consistency means something. It doesn't replace modern science, but it tells researchers exactly where to look. And modern science has started looking. Laboratories studying this plant have identified specific natural compounds within it that show activity against certain organisms in controlled settings. Some of these compounds have demonstrated properties that interfere with the growth of unwanted microbes. Others have shown effects that support the gut lining and calm inflammation. Early animal studies have looked at how these compounds interact with intestinal organisms, and the results have been promising enough to keep researchers interested rather than moving on to something else. This research is still early. It's not the same as large human trials, and anyone telling you it's a guaranteed cure is skipping over some very important scientific caution. There's also a safety side worth respecting. At high concentrations in lab studies, some of the plant's compounds have shown effects that would be harmful if misused. Pregnant women are generally advised to avoid it entirely, and anyone managing a liver or kidney condition or taking prescription medication should talk to a doctor before trying anything containing it. Traditional use over centuries gives us a signal, not a shortcut around caution. But it's also not nothing. It's a signal, and signals like this are exactly what leads to future breakthroughs. 2,000 years of consistent use by trained physicians, followed by modern chemistry, finally confirming that the plant contains genuinely active compounds, is a rare kind of alignment. Old wisdom and new evidence pointing in the same direction. Before we go further, let's pause for one more thing, because this next part might genuinely change how you watch the rest of this video. If you're finding this helpful, I want you to do something different this time. Instead of just liking the video, leave one word in the comments describing how your gut has been feeling lately. Just one word. It helps me understand exactly what to cover in future videos, and it helps other people scrolling through the comments realize they're not the only one feeling this way. Go ahead, drop that word now, and then come right back, because we're only getting started. Now, let's talk about what you can actually do, starting today, without needing a prescription or a plane ticket to some remote forest. The first and most overlooked step is simply paying closer attention to your food safety habits. Wash fruits and vegetables thoroughly, even the ones with skins you don't eat, because contamination can transfer during peeling or cutting. Cook meat all the way through, especially pork and freshwater fish, which carry a higher risk of certain parasite species. Avoid drinking untreated water, even water that looks completely clear, because many parasite eggs and cysts are invisible to the naked eye. These habits sound almost too simple to matter, but public health researchers consistently point to exactly these basics as the biggest gap between people who get infected and people who don't. The second step involves rebuilding your gut environment so it becomes a harder place for unwanted organisms to thrive. This starts with fiber. Most people don't get nearly enough of it, and fiber isn't just about digestion. It feeds the beneficial bacteria in your gut, which in turn helps crowd out organisms that don't belong there. Beans, lentils, oats, and vegetables should become daily regulars, not occasional additions. Studies looking at fiber intake across different populations have repeatedly found that diets rich in plant fiber correlate with a more diverse, more resilient gut microbiome, one that's naturally more resistant to being taken over by anything harmful. Alongside fiber, water matters. More than most people realize, increasing fiber without increasing water intake can actually make digestive problems worse instead of better. They work as a team. Neither one does its job properly without the other. A simple habit worth building is drinking a full glass of water first thing in the morning, before coffee, before anything else. It helps kickstart digestion and gives your gut the hydration it needs to move fiber through properly. Fermented foods deserve their own mention here. Yogurt with live active cultures, kefir, sauerkraut, kimchi, miso. These introduce beneficial bacteria directly into your gut, shifting the internal balance in a direction that makes it harder for harmful organisms to establish themselves. Many traditional cultures around the world included fermented foods in their diet for exactly this reason, long before anyone understood the microbiome scientifically. It's worth noticing that almost every long-lived culinary tradition on Earth includes some form of fermentation. That's not a coincidence. It's generations of accumulated wisdom about what keeps the gut strong. Certain natural compounds have also been studied for their potential to support the body's own ability to deal with intestinal parasites. Raw pumpkin seeds contain a compound that has shown activity against certain worm species in early research. Garlic contains sulfur compounds that have demonstrated antimicrobial properties in laboratory studies. Papaya seeds have a long history of traditional use for digestive cleansing, and some modern lab studies have started to explore why. None of these are magic. None of them replace medical testing or treatment when something serious is actually present. But as part of a broader approach to gut health, they've earned their place in the conversation for a reason. We're a little more than halfway through this video, and I want to say thank you for staying with me this far. If something in the last few minutes made you pause, made you think about your own stomach, your own energy, your own unexplained symptoms, do one small thing for me. Share this video with one person who needs to hear it. Not everyone, just one. Send it to the friend who's always tired or the family member who's been complaining about their stomach for months. That single share might be the reason someone finally gets the answers they've been missing. Movement matters too, more than people give it credit for. A short walk after meals, even just 15 to 20 minutes, helps food move through your digestive tract the way it's supposed to. When digestion slows down, waste sits longer than it should, and that creates an environment where problems are more likely to take hold and linger. This is such a small habit, and yet it's one of the most consistently recommended by digestive health researchers, precisely because it costs nothing and works almost immediately. Sleep is another piece people underestimate. Your gut actually runs on its own internal rhythm, and irregular or poor sleep disrupts that rhythm directly, not eventually, but almost immediately. The same habits that protect your brain and your mood are quietly protecting your gut at the very same time. Going to bed and waking up at consistent times, even on weekends, gives your digestive system the predictability it needs to function well. And then there's the simplest habit of all, the one that costs absolutely nothing and prevents more infections than almost anything else on this list. Washing your hands before meals, after using the bathroom, after handling raw meat or gardening in soil. It sounds almost too basic to mention, but it remains one of the single most effective barriers against the exact organisms we've been talking about this entire video. Public health data across decades keeps confirming the same thing again and again. This one habit, done consistently, prevents more intestinal infections than nearly any supplement or remedy ever could. Now, I want to be completely honest with you about something because this channel isn't here to scare you into buying a random supplement. Natural remedies and dietary changes can support your gut and may help create conditions that are harder for parasites to survive in, but they are not a replacement for proper testing when your symptoms have gone on for weeks or months without improvement. If you're experiencing unexplained weight loss, blood in your stool, a fever that won't go away, or symptoms that started right after international travel, please don't try to handle that with home remedies alone. A simple stool sample sent to a lab can detect parasites and infections that no amount of guessing ever will. It's a small, inexpensive test that can save you months, sometimes years, of unexplained suffering. And if you've already been to a doctor and walked away without real answers, go back. Ask specifically about a comprehensive stool test. Ask whether your symptoms could be connected to something in your gut that hasn't been properly investigated yet. You are allowed to ask for more than a rushed 5-minute explanation for something that has quietly affected your life for months. You deserve a complete answer, not a partial one. Here's something worth sitting with for a moment. So many people spend years chasing explanations for how they feel. blaming stress, blaming age, blaming a busy schedule, when the real answer might be something far more treatable than they ever imagined. Something as small as a parasite, invisible to the eye, hiding in plain sight, inside a body that's been trying to send out warning signs the whole time. The plants and traditions we talked about today didn't survive for thousands of years by accident. They survived because generation after generation of people noticed the same patterns we're only now beginning to explain with modern science. That doesn't mean every old remedy is a miracle cure. It means some of them deserve a second, more serious look. The kind of look science is finally starting to give them. Think about that for a second. A remedy written down in ancient texts, used quietly and consistently for 2,000 years, is only now being studied in a modern laboratory. That gap between when something was first noticed and when science finally caught up to explain it tells you something important about how slowly real understanding moves, and how much wisdom can sit forgotten in old books until someone decides to take it seriously again. Before we wrap up, one last thing. If this video opened your eyes to something you hadn't considered before, comment the word gut below so I know how many of you actually made it to the end. It genuinely helps this channel grow, and it lets me know exactly what to cover next. And if you know someone who's been dealing with unexplained fatigue or stomach issues for way too long, send them this video right now before you forget. You might be the reason they finally get answers instead of just guesses. Your body has been talking to you this whole time. Bloating that won't go away. Fatigue that sleep doesn't fix. Cravings you can't explain. These aren't random. They're messages. And now you know a little more about what those messages might actually mean. Listen closely to what your body has been trying to tell you. Sometimes the smallest, most invisible things carry the biggest impact on how you feel every single day, and once you know what to look for, you can never truly unsee it again. If you made it this far, you're clearly someone who takes your health seriously, and that already puts you ahead of most people. So don't stop here. Get curious. Ask questions. Get tested if something feels wrong. And take back control of how you feel, one small, informed step at a time.